talk about your experience. And all I know about is the Koreans, and I believe when they came to Canada, and your involvement with them, and any other, minor hockey involvement, developmental involvement you've had. Can you talk a bit about your Korean experience? How did that come about?
The Korean was it was in the early 90s and I was assistant coach for UFC. But anyway, I was just going to Father Bauer Arena to play on that rink that's attached to it, Norma Bush, I think it is. There's all these guys milling around the ice there, and we'd played the Japanese national team, University of Calgary, the year before. So I asked this guy standing there, I said, "Is that a Japanese team?" He says, "No, it's a Korean team." I said, "Why aren't they doing anything?" And he said, "Well, we got a coach, but he quit because nobody speaks English and he doesn't know what to do." And I said, "Who's that?" And he said the guy's name. I said, "Oh, I used to coach against him. I coached against him in Bantamweight." He says, "You're a coach?" And I said, "Yeah." So they had two-hour practices a day, 6 days a week for 4 weeks, so 96 hours on the ice. And he said, "Well, will you come and run our afternoon practice?" And I'm a teacher, so I had the summer off. So I said, "Sure." So they like what I did. And I ended up coaching them for 8 years. And one year they brought two teams. So I'd be on the ice instead of 4 hours, 6 hours, because they'd alternate coaching one of the it was high school teams then. The first team was college, and the last year I coached was a pro team. But we beat UFC 2 out of 3, the pro team. And so that was kind of neat because nobody spoke English. Except the last year, there was a guy from Calgary, Billy Kim, and he spoke English. But so I just used the international symbols, and for skate, shoot, I just spoke in one words, and they would listen because if they didn't listen, they got beat. So the coach would make him lean on the boards with his hands and whack him with a stick in the rear end. If he was really mad, he'd whack him in the back of the legs. So they paid attention, and then they had a downturn in their economy and they didn't come for a few years, and I never saw them after that. But I've also been to Norway about the same time. I did a camp there for a few weeks, and then UFC came and played. I organized a European tour for them, and they played. We played in Norway, then Sweden, and Finland against pro teams. And I've done a couple of in Austria, in Zeltweg and Linz, Austria camps, and Guadalajara, Mexico, and LA, and 8 different states. And yeah, yeah, the last one I did was in Czech Republic, not Czechia, about 90 miles south of Prague. And there's an ex-NHLer was a guy, and I'd go over the practice beforehand with him, and then he'd speak to them in Czech. So, I had the opportunity to, I think, 7 countries on 3 continents, in Seoul, Korea, too. They brought us there, too. And 7 countries and 3 continents, and I counted 8 or 9 states that have been brought down to do stuff. So you see a lot of different, attitudes and levels and stuff like that.
Tom, pardon the background noise,
I
but
can't hear it.
good. I'm just going to ask you a question here. What what is it that you bring? Because so many countries, so many teams. Now, I believe they're all on the male side. You may have done some female work, but what was it that you felt worked for you that attracted your services to them?
I think because I work with Johanni, and that was probably the biggest thing is 3 summers the Finnish Ice Hockey Federation brought me to Viramäki, and I was the head instructor at their national hockey school, and I'd have NHLers like Lume and Teppo Newman and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's because the basic way they organize everything is based on the four game playing roles and the three situations. And then you're teaching the total game. You're not just like the kids now are getting all this individual offensive skill, but it does, it doesn't teach you how to play hockey. And I think because I try to teach the entire game, and then I'm one of the only guys still that uses transition games and tournaments and stuff like that. So I think my practices, if you've seen them, they're quite different than other practices generally. And I think that so they're getting something different with me than they would, just doing it on their own. So that's what I think the difference is. I can't hear you now.
I'm just making a call to Peter. He was going to join us because I'm not sure whether this is his first foray into working with another country. Uh, but what we've done and you've done in particular is a number of years ago. And the game has advanced, it's expanded to so many countries. And our good friend Dean Holden, he is probably more connected with the International Ice Hockey Federation and the formal guidance of the growth of hockey around the world. And Peters, I'm not sure which South American country he's working with. You said you've been to Mexico. And I just want to ask you about Mexico because that's South American. And what do you remember about that experience and challenges that you face there?
I was in Guadalajara, and this coach, I can't remember how but he contacted me to go there. And Carlos Magura, I think you said it. Anyway, he had a goaltender and a defenseman's son, and they're both pretty good. And they both ended up with a youth, playing for the Mexican youth team. But they took Jim and I down there, and there's 29 kids in the total association, and I think they'd made a grocery store into a rink. I don't know exactly what it was, but the roof wasn't very high, and you know, you got Peter on the line there. I've lost you again.
Tom, you're ice in Mexico. I don't know if you remember the year, but you said it was a grocery store in
I think
Mexico.
it was like, you know, they'd converted something into a rink. I don't even know if they have it anymore. But that the ceiling was about 7 feet high, maybe, and the real tall guys might have hit their head on the beams. I don't know if it was, and it was like Formula One Zamboni drive, and the guy just gunned it. And then I think he was going to go through the boards. He'd slow down, make the corner. Took him about 5 minutes to do the ice. But there are 29 kids, and of course nobody spoke English there either. So it's kind of translate from my experience with other places. And we practiced for what was it, 2.5 hours or something, 8 in the morning. And then Carlos would take Jim and I on a tour around his province, different places and kind of like a vacation thing. And one day took us to Puerto Vallarta, and we stayed in a 5-star for a night or two. And a really interesting thing happened then is we're coming back to Guadalajara, and we stop at a orchard, banana trees and all this kind of stuff. And I'd asked him before, I said, I'm really interested because there's places the French were and the Spanish were and the places were like that. I said, I'm really interested in seeing, inside their houses and that, because it was all quite different. Like the French place there, they were cooking a pig on a spit outside. I remember that. And so, anyways, he asked these guys in the orchard, he said, do you mind? I got the coach from Canada. He'd love to see your place where you live. So they get in a half-ton truck and we're following them through the jungle. And Jim says, "What are we doing? We're going to get murdered." And we're going through dirt roads through the jungle. And we get to their place and there's a big open thatch roof place, and then where they lived. But the beach was the nicest beach I've ever seen in my life. It was probably 100 yards of beach, and then they said you can walk out for I don't know how long before it's too. Um, so, want me to keep talking, Peter?
Hey, Tom, I'm trying to get Peter on.
Yeah,
I admitted him once and I thought he would appear, but uh, I did admit you, Peter. Could you, uh, cut out and come right in again to the same link I sent, please?
want me to leave and then go or what?
Anybody don't feel like a real whistling in the background?
Oh.
I'm gonna have to plug this in because
Yeah, I've got you on your phone.
computer's being obstinate today.
Hey, Peter, I'm just going to phone Tom and see if he can join back in. Okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna get a charger so I can plug my phone into.
Okay. Hey, Tom.
Yeah, I thought you said to cut out and
Yeah,
go back in, so I did that.
Peter's on now. He's just
Hi,
using
Peter.
his phone, but we'll get going on that. I mean, I thought I had stories to tell about my international experience, but oh my God, you've been everywhere and done everything. So, uh, hi, Peter.
Good
Welcome.
morning. Yeah, I think
We're
the
going to
charger's
get a little
working now.
background interruption once in a while, Peter.
Yeah, well, I'll keep you safe over there, right?
But I lost your picture, Peter. Peter,
Yeah,
like,
last week I
you
couldn't get on with my
hug.
phone. Yeah. Anyway, carrying on with that story of mine, they said the only people that are ever there is every once in a while when the turtles laid their eggs, poachers would come to try to steal them. So
Huh.
some environmentalists would come and protect the beach, but it was the nicest beach I've ever seen in my life. And Carlos tried to find that place again. He could never find it. So
I don't know. Is that any better? Do you hear me?
there you go. I
I
hear
hear
you.
you, but I can't see you.
Yeah, well, you're not missing much there. Uh, I don't know what's going on. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Let's see.
There you
Good.
go.
All right. Yeah,
Okay,
for some
Tom.
reason, I got the link on my computer, but it just doesn't want to work. So I got the phone. I got it plugged in. I think we have power. I think we're okay.
I was opposite last week or last time. My phone wouldn't work.
All right. Well, we take turns.
Peter,
Yes, sir.
What country were you working with? Was it male or female? What age group? And just tell me how you connected with that South American country to get involved coaching. And I believe it's female hockey. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So it's Team Puerto Rico. So that's involved with the U.S. as well, right? Because it's Puerto Rico, and it's the Division 1 team, which is for lack of a better way to put it. I mean, you know how international works. You could have someone who's 18 on the team and someone who's 30. So it's the team that's being built to hopefully be able to get to the point where they can compete in pool play in the IIHF and begin to earn spots in that so that they can get themselves to compete for Olympic medals down the road. And how I got involved was their head coach is an individual who also does a lot of team building and some sports psychology. And I met him actually through a mutual friend, Mike Benelli, when my team, when we were going through COVID. So that was 4 or 5 years ago now. And he does a lot. He does podcasts and that. So I've guested on his podcast several times. Struck up a friendship. And when he got the job as the head coach for Team Puerto Rico for the women, he approached me and asked me if I wanted to help with the recruiting and potentially some coaching in that. So that's how I got initially involved with it.
Well, Peter, what level would they be at? I'm not sure the international structure.
So right now the team is comprised of a mix of players because again, it's really in its infancy. So there's players that would have played NCAA Division 1 hockey. There's players that would have played NCAA Division 3, and then some club hockey and prep school players. It's all right now. It's very very fluid because they're gaining some traction now, and more players who are of Puerto Rican descent are hearing about this. The biggest thing is trying to find ways to get words out and reach those people because the individual that can play is someone who either is born in Puerto Rico, whose parents are born in Puerto Rico, whose grandparents are born in Puerto Rico. But a lot of these players, they have a parent who was born in Puerto Rico. Let's say it's a mom. Well, if she takes the maiden name of Mr. Smith, that's not a very Puerto Rican name. So it's hard to find the individuals. They are slowly finding Team Puerto Rico, though, which has been good. And because I coached a team in New Jersey a couple months back, and I believe I'm going down the end of August in something called the Latin American Cup, LATAM Cup, Latin America Cup, where we'll play teams from Argentina, Colombia, and the Caribbean.
Now,
So Mexico's not in that?
I'm sorry?
Is Mexico in that?
Uh, they are not in this tournament. No.
Okay.
That I saw. I'm talking on the women's side. I'm not sure who's on the men's side. I mean, I'm assuming we play everyone, and the three games I see are those teams. So
Yeah.
Peter, what pool is that? D, C, B?
it would be, I don't, as far as pool play goes, right? They're trying to get ranked to get into actual pool play. So it actually is. I don't believe, and I could be completely wrong, because this is new to me too, and I'm learning as I go. That that's the goal, is to be able to begin to get into pool play. because there's other pieces that go along with this too. Apparently, that the hosting country for that for the team has to have a rink built, and then they also have to play a certain number of games in that rink, tournament wise or year wise. They're trying to build it from the ground up. So right now it's kind of getting built from the outside in, if you will, right? Because there are not the number of players playing in Puerto Rico now simply because they don't have the rinks to grow it. So they're starting to grow the grassroots in the country in the hopes that moving forward there will be a large population of Puerto Rican skaters that have been developed, both men and women, to compete.
Peter, you mentioned uh, you had players playing Division One and three.
Yes, Division NCAA Division One players and Division Three players. Some players that are currently playing, some that are former players.
How
Okay.
did they get funded? Or is there funding?
Right now, they are funding themselves. That's why this is such a unique group. These are women that either they or their families, or I mean, I'm not sure how if they do any fundraising on their own, but right now the money comes out of their own pocket, and they'll get an Airbnb, and they'll, get a place that, can sleep 10 people, and they'll put 10 people in one. And so it's a very unique and interesting group of people who want to be part of something that's right from the beginning, right from the start. Similar to, honestly, when I was at Post University and we started our program, they're the pioneers of the program. It's the same thing, right? They're making an investment in their situation, an actual financial investment, as well as time. There's training that we do. There's a team doctor set up for helping them. So it's very professionally set up. And right now they're working to get funding, but like anything, funding is always the most difficult part, I think.
Peter, I just wanted to mention Dean Holden. He is probably of all the Sharks the most experienced working with the International Ice Hockey Federation and doing exactly what you're talking about. He's been in many different countries around the world, but not in South America. But he recently returned from Dubai at an international conference on behalf of the IHF to initiate their hockey program. The IHF connection, to me, it seems like very important if you're going to progress much farther. And I'm not sure what USA Hockey role is with the IHF in terms of helping them achieve their goals. But when Peter gets on, pardon me, when Dean comes on again in another one, we're going to have him talk about that because, man, the game is not ours anymore. We used to think it was just Canada. Oh boy.
Well, it's kind of what everyone, I think, dreamed of, right? We have talked for years about expanding the game and finding different ways to do it. Um, I don't know if it's true or not. Interestingly, I saw something come up on Instagram where it was on social media. Of course, it must be true that Gary Bettman is involved in talks to rekindle the Quebec Nordiques. So in Quebec. So I don't know if that's true or not too, but growing the game is what we always talk about. And I think this is just another facet of that because, like I said, when I was in New Jersey, we played a team from Lebanon, we played a team from Egypt, we played a team from South Korea. Uh, it was, again, countries that are certainly non-traditional hockey venues, but it's growing and there's excitement about it. And the fact that these individuals are taking money out of their own pockets to make this happen right now, as well as they're working, I know, with some corporate donations, hopefully somewhere down the road. But there's so many pieces, right? Because they're building, so they need to build a youth program because they want to feed that. Then they have a junior program already in place where ages 13 to 16, they'll be able to play in some tournaments. And then they have, again, two teams. Like right now, they've got a division, they're calling a Division 2 level team and Division 1 level team. And Division 1 level team is the team that would be representing Puerto Rico in the IIHF tournaments down the road. So that's the team that I'm involved with, trying to help build and support.
Peter and Tom, both of you, Tom was on earlier and talked about some of the adventures with the North Koreans. It's a different culture. Is Puerto Rico American? So
Yeah.
there's no
Yes, it's one of the U.S. provinces. Yes.
so there's no problem culturally of them adapting to that sport.
No, I mean the difference is it's not a sport that they have. I guess it would be like if I'll just pick a sport just because my wife is Irish. So it'd be just like if hurling decided hurling was going to come to the U.S. Right? They would have to do the same thing. They'd start hurling clubs, probably find people who were of that heritage, who have experienced it or have a parent that experienced it, and then they would try to grow that with camps, clinics for that age group, and build it. So like culturally, it's definitely a new sport to the country, not necessarily a new sport to the players involved, because obviously they're involved because two things, they have that Puerto Rican heritage, and they also, since they were children, most of them in the States, obviously, um, have the actual experience of playing the game of hockey. So the key is to try to get it going over in Puerto Rico, introduce to them what it is, how to play it, all those things that you do.
Peter, what are the challenges working with that team? Like
I'm
what
sorry. What are the what?
the challenges? What did you work on? Where are they at? Where do they need to go? I'm just talking about what you've got and not growing the program below you yet, but you have a team that's going to be competing.
Yeah, we have a team. This team is probably overall, with the addition of some players, probably stronger than the team that was in New Jersey. And I don't say there's any disrespect, because there's some good players who are in the Division 2 level team right now who want to get to this next level. So there's compete within in a positive way that's being created just by the volume of players that are showing interest. Now the challenges are that you don't practice on a regular basis, right? I mean, that's like with any team, like with any tournament team. The exciting thing is when they get together, it's quick, it's short, right? It's 5 days, I think, total tournament play. So there's a lot that happens very quickly. There's a lot of excitement, but you're also trying to get people onto the same page. And some may come from a team where maybe they always played a particular forecheck, and maybe we play a different forecheck. So as far as the technical aspect of it, it's really more the best way to coach this team that I've seen so far is honestly to let them play and don't criticize, but talk in a group, because that's the one thing that um, I think, for the most part, I see a difference between women at that age level and men at that age level is they're receptive. They're receptive as a group because again, like this particular group, because this is not like a college team, right? Where you're practicing every day and you've got a whole different set of dynamics. This is a group of individuals who have actually all made the same choice as to represent a country that is part of their family heritage and pay for it themselves. So they're really on board and pretty much a sponge. Like they want to be coached. They want to be coached. So we let them play, and then we talk between periods. We talk before games. Hey, this is what works. This is what didn't work the last time. What do you think? Right? I think the best way to empower a player is to ask them what they think, because if you go back, Wally, right, to like back in the day, right, coaches, you never asked the player what they thought. You told them what to think, right?
Well, I'm curious,
He's
Peter,
joined us.
Puerto Rico's a state of the United States.
Protectorate, I think.
Does that make sense? How are they going to represent a state in the Olympics?
Well, they're not a state. They're a province, right? I'm gonna make sure
Isn't it protectorate?
I'm gonna make sure I use the right verbiage here. So I'm just looking some up real quick.
Hell's joined us, or I mean, yeah, Hell's joined us, Wally. He's not there anymore, but he was.
He's waving
There he
his
is.
hand. He's probably at his desk. He said, just waved his hand hello.
Yeah,
Hell,
there he is.
So it's
Morning, boys.
the way that it's defined is Puerto Rico is a Caribbean island in unincorporated U.S. territory. So it's a U.S. territory.
Okay.
So that's how they're part of the U.S. So I mean, being part of the U.S. is I think less less part of the issue than as a territory. Hopefully, the U.S. can support in some fashion, but it's on them to create an actual hockey program, grassroots from the ground up. Is that your smoothie, Hal? Is that the morning smoothie?
Yeah,
My wife
that's my
does.
five servings of fruit every day and yogurt.
Yeah, my wife does the same thing. Makes me share it. I love it. It's great.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's what Puerto Rico is to the U.S. I mean, it's good. Like I tell you what, it's a fun group that doesn't like to lose. That is pretty darn supportive of each other. You're just working to try to have different styles kind of mesh, and that's kind of the fun part about coaching is trying to find what the combination is, right? Like I don't want to put two offensive defensemen together because that means we got odd man rushes the other way all day long, right? So you have to define roles for them, and it's worked out pretty well. Like they're pretty receptive. Like if we talk to defensemen, because I ran the D the last tournament, and said, listen, we got an offensive defenseman and we have a defensive defenseman. You have to know that when they go, where you got to be. Rotate back to the middle, head on a swivel, count five in front of you, all those things. And they're very receptive to that kind of thing. They seem like they really like to learn, and that's been for me one of the most fun parts about this so far.
Are these women?
Yeah, it's women, and and again they can be anywhere from 16 to 36, right? I mean,
Wow.
in international play, you got a range. So you're also dealing with different personnel. You're dealing with adults. You're dealing with people in the heat of the battle that are in college right now, and then you're dealing with teenagers.
Jeez.
So there's a lot going on, but it's all good. I mean, it's really fun. It's really exciting.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning. Do you practice ever?
So they'll practice before the tournament. They'll get a practice in before the tournament. And but you know, like a practice before a tournament, if it's one practice, you're going to be just trying to get your legs going
Yeah.
and that. I mean, in between there, we do Zooms roughly once a week. So we'll talk a little bit about tactics, talk a little bit about maybe what we want to do in certain situations, uh, based on who we have as players. What's the best way to play, right? Because it might be very different from what the best way to play was on their college team.
Yeah. When I coached the U15 girls team a few years back, and I started out coaching them as if they were boys, and they didn't like that.
So what? Which
And
part? Now, which part didn't they like? Like when you say you coach them as boys, like which part?
well, if we were doing some sort of drill, some sort of play like in zone, and typically I would when that rep was up, I would talk to the players. I'd say to one or two of the players, if they were boys, and let's do this with the girls, I'd say, I think, give them some sort of correction.
Right.
And they didn't like that. So then I got them together and I said, okay, how are we going to do this? How am I going to help you guys? I said, I'm just trying to help and give you some feedback. And they go, oh, okay, well, we like that. As a group, they like it, but they don't like to be singled out.
No, so you have to approach it like, hey, in that play there, I see what the player was trying to do, right? But
Yeah,
I think we can do this. This might work out better for the group.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, because they don't. It's so funny though, because as you get to the higher levels, because my son works with a lot of high end Division I athletes, and they want to be coached like the guys, the
yeah,
girls,
I
like
know. Yeah,
high
yeah,
end Division I. They want to be coached like don't pamper me.
right.
Like if I'm messing up, you tell me if I'm messing up. So it's part of it all depends on the player you have and the level you're at too, right?
Yeah.
Because like 15, God bless you 15 girls. Like I remember when my daughter was a teenager, like you walked on eggshells for about 3 years until they turned 18. Just
Well, good for you for doing that. That
to say
sounds like it's really fun.
you cared, you didn't want to say the wrong thing. And as a guy, we tend to be, I think, generally males are very direct,
Yeah,
and that works in hockey at a certain level with a certain level of player.
no.
But it doesn't work when players are learning or if they're younger. It just doesn't work.
Another thing that sticks in my mind was, you know, their zone entries and they would just attack the defenseman. The puck carrier would attack, right at the defenseman. And I finally said, "What's in? What are you thinking about?" Well, I'm kind of going and dangle her and see if I can beat her. I said, "Well, how's that working?" Well, not too good. I said, "How about this? When you go across the blue line, instead of going straight at her, maybe what's it? Why don't you go over here and let her come and get you?" Oh, yeah, that might work. And then they start doing that, and that's the big 90 Gretzky move, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But get into the middle and creating tension on the part of the defender
Yeah.
and
And
putting
then,
them in a position to make a decision rather than
yeah,
you go to
they're great
them.
that you share that information with them.
Yeah.
But it's all again, it's all in the approach, which I like because in order for I think to become a good coach, you have to be some level of personnel manager.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to know every player, what motivates them, how to get the best out of them, because your job as a coach is to get the best out of them,
Oh,
but it's going to be different. Again, you got different personalities. So
yeah.
but that's kind of what makes it fun. That's one thing I see younger coaches get frustrated with is you just got to take a breath and figure out what works.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're all these kids are different. They need to be coached. You need to coach every player rather than just the team.
Yes, 100%, which can be, as you know, that can get pretty exhausting. But
Yeah.
it's what you signed up for. You know, when I hear a coach say, like, because I've seen this, I know coaches that do this at the college level. They'll tell their guys, well, you know, it's a tough world out there. You just got to figure it out. Well, that's just a cop out.
Hmm.
You got to know that kid. Like, if that kid's not figuring it out, it's your job to reach them somehow and make them understand, first off, that they're not figuring it out, and then
Yeah.
second, how they can figure it out.
Yeah.
That's your
Oh,
job, coach. Like, if that's, you're not doing them any service by trying to be macho and tell them it's a tough world out there. You got to figure it out. Like,
yep.
that's silly.
How the
So
Calgary boys doing?
Okay. We had our camp there last week. It was perfect amount of players. At 17 skaters, 2 goalies, and it was really enjoyable. Players
what age
caught
was
on to
that?
everything right away. We could do everything, you know, could do everything. And being the girls would just explain something or the other coach would explain something and they'd go out and do it right away. It was incredible how quickly they caught on to things.
What age was that?
It was a U15,
Okay.
the age I coach. So
Right.
I only had 3 players from my team and all
Okay.
the other, well, we had 7 first years, so the other 13 have all aged out.
Right.
And there are three players from the team there. So all the other girls were new to it, and it was a really good week. My coaching staff basically ran it, and
Was this your 2 ice sessions a day and off ice
yeah, 2
and
hockeys, and then
yeah,
finish off with the skating. And at the skating at one end, I had a goalie coach working with the 2 goalies.
sure.
Except on Friday, I play at noon, so I got that skating coach to come the middle of the day so I could still play. And and then we had a game on Sunday, and we played 4-on-4. Wally was at it, 4-on-4, which was really good. 3-on-3, the better players dominated a little. I would have, if I was to do it again, I just have the whole thing 4-on-4 because, like, one girl scored 7 goals.
Hmm.
Another girl is probably more dynamic, but she's not a natural goal scorer. She scored 3, and she shoots harder than most men. Like, it's incredible,
Yeah.
but she doesn't have that. She doesn't really have a scoring touch.
Yeah.
She scores. And Wally was there.
Tom, are these girls that are hopeful to make your team in the fall?
Yeah, they'll all be trying out.
Okay.
So I just got the tryout thing last night. They're going to start with 8 teams, play 2 games, cut it to 6 teams, 2 games, cut it to 4 teams, and then 2 games. Then the 3 teams draft. Out of those 4 teams, draft 3 teams.
Yeah, that's incredible. You have that kind of depth that you can put together a tryout for one team that is comprised of 8 different teams. So that's
Last year there's 160, but there won't be that many this year. This a super league started. These guys are super, so they call it super. So I guess 24, 25 girls have gone to this super league. I think they go there. My take on it is if they don't think they're going to make like our team, they go and play in the super league. Well, a couple of the better players go, but not very many.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. But you definitely have it wonderfully figured out with just a nice resource with all those players. Because I know here, like youth hockey, like the local youth hockeys here, man, they're always struggling with something. No goalie,
Yeah.
not it's for 2 teams. There's always something.
Yeah,
Peter, I want to ask Tom, all of you, um, the reason, Tom, biggest reason I've heard they leave for the Super League is they only take 9 forwards and they get 3 lines, so they get more ice time. They do have an extra practice a week. Hell, where you coach, Peter, with you and your team, is it a 3-line team, a 4-line team, or do you have 4 lines and when you play to win, you only play two lines.
Well, it's
We,
so. Go ahead, Hal.
uh, yeah, we just have 9 forwards and probably 5D and hope nobody gets hurt too badly. And I was actually just talking with a Minnesota hockey guy that's now we're working for the Wild, and he said, programs are cutting their roster sizes down so they don't have to deal with the short bench issue with, 4 lines and playing two. But our games are get the game length is an hour and 15 minutes of ice time. And, we ran into this 2 years ago and a little bit this last year. You get down to the end of the game, or and the other team's only running a line and a half. They're playing their top 5 players, all the time. We're trying to play all 3 lines. And so now you have to decide, are we going to match what they're doing? Or are we just going to keep, going along and keeping, try not to get our third line out against their first line, but it's pretty hard to do in youth hockey. You can't stop the puck. You can't take timeouts. There's a lot of stuff you can't do to manage this stuff. And so I don't know. I mean, I wrote an article 20 years ago, about shorting the evils of shorting your bench. Cold, dry hands. How short is your bench? Because when you go through the handshake line, the cold hands are the kids that didn't play.
Yeah.
And we've seen some just egregious stuff. And it's no wonder kids quit playing hockey after
Yeah.
13 or 14 years old, when they've sat on the bench and watched their friends play most of the games. And but they do get to come to practice. Everybody gets to come to practice.
Well, one big difference with us is we get 60-minute stop time games. So, that's almost twice as much ice time, like 2 hours, 15 minutes or something. So it suits
Yeah.
4 lines better than 3.
Yeah, I mean, with us, it's the local youth organizations here. Most of them are 9 forwards, 4D, and a lot of that is out of necessity, just because you don't have enough kids. Like if you took one team at 4 lines and 6D, you wouldn't have a second team. So it gets more kids playing. It's an opportunity to get more kids involved, more kids, more. They're short, like up to peewees. I think squirts and peewees are 12-minute periods, 3 12-minute periods, and then you hit Bantam, you get 15.
Right, we do too.
And I think midget is either 17 or 18, something like that.
Well, I know high school is 17, which would
Yeah.
be midgets, 18 and under, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's
We
about
don't have midgets in Minnesota.
you don't get the hour. I mean, you get 45 minutes is the best you can get until you get into high school.
Yeah, the games will end. I had the discussion with this guy because I don't like, the automatic whistle. If you're shorthanded and you can't ice the puck because they blow the whistle and they start over again, and then there's no tag up off sides, so it's an immediate whistle, and it accounts for probably another 5 to 7 face-offs per game. But then the game ends up on the wall clock, not on the game clock.
Yeah, and the other issue that I have with that is, in order to develop, you have to be in game-like situations, and many stops where we're just lining up for face-offs again. While that is a game situation, it's certainly not the learning tool that a game situation is when the game is flowing and moving. So,
right, I agree.
Right.
Well,
So
women's league, where Cassie was coaching with us, and she's an advisor for that women's pro league. And she asked me, what would you do? And I said, I would eliminate offside face-offs. I said, there's no plays on them. And the team that went offside can win the face-off. So I would have everything, and that's what we did in our game on Sunday. Everything is just a delayed face-off. The other team gets the puck just like on a delay, and they kept going. And to keep the game going, also, I said, if they ice it, the team that ices it can't get the puck. They have to let the defending team get the puck so that, you
Yeah.
know, just eliminate as many faceoffs as possible. So our only faceoffs, the goalie freezes it or a goal or a penalty, but I don't think there's any penalties.
Girls
Yes.
don't take a lot of penalties.
Yeah. No, you're right. They don't. I think we probably had 3 penalties, maybe 4 for the entire tournament in New Jersey. So that was pretty good. And they got after it pretty good. They didn't shy away from the physical part of the game either.
But I mean, we talked about this on other, I think when Sammy was on, about how physical, well, in the women's professional league, it's, full checking now. And you watch some of the Division One college and it's pretty close to it. I mean, it's, uh, especially along the wall, there's a lot of physical play along the wall. And then it's going to be a lot of at least the girls here from our program, we've got 5 of them that are going D1 either this year or next year. One of them is, 4'7", and she plays D, and she's really skilled, but there is some physics involved in all of this.
Yeah.
And I hope she's gonna play at Harvard, and so that's it's cool she got to go there, but I think size is going to become more important in Division One women and in because of the pro game. It'll take a while, but I mean, I'm when I was younger, I was a hair over 6'1" or 6 feet, a little over 6 feet. And as a high school player, I was one of the biggest guys on the team at 6 feet. And it's like now today I'd be well down the size. I mean, I've seen all these kids coming through in high school that are 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". I mean, the player and they're skilled. They're not in the old days. The big guys weren't as skilled, but these kids are all really skilled. And
Yeah, it's gonna change. I think with the women, change the women's game. I think from the aspect of just what you're talking about is you're going to see probably teams that are just loaded with big players,
yeah,
right? Or at least 1 or 2 lines of big players. I probably want a bigger defenseman because if I can find a defenseman that's 5'9" or
oh,
bigger, then they can protect the puck better and they have a better chance of moving out of the zone and winning the 50-50 along a wall.
yeah. I mean, just they occupy more space too. I went down and watched Shattuck. I was watching the boys play, but the girls were playing it ahead of it. At Shattuck St. Mary's. I mean, they had girls that were 6'4", 6'5". They weren't very. They didn't play. I don't know. I hate to say they weren't very skilled, but they weren't. But they were big, and they played a good system. And they'd be hard to play against. And they dominated. I think they were playing Culver Academy. They kind of dominated them that day. But it's like, I went, wow, look at the size of these girls.
I had
So,
one goalie
anyways,
from Shattuck. She was like 6'1", really good. First
uh,
year she played, she came back 40 pounds overweight next year and wasn't so good.
yeah. So, anyways, what else you guys up to? Did you go to the Stampede?
I'm going on Saturday with my son. It
How long is this? Does this go on for like a week?
was 10 days. It started last Friday and it goes
Yeah.
to Sunday.
Okay.
So, yeah, I saw
So
some
it's
video of a concert or something last night that tens of
yeah, they
thousands of
they
people.
got concerts going all over, and then they're in the afternoons a rodeo, and at night is truck wagons, and they also have a stage show. And I go to a thing called Nashville North. It's a huge tent, and it's free, and you go in there, and different country music bands play, and
Yeah, sounds like
people
fun.
drink and dance, and
Tom, has the Flames made any off-season moves that you're excited about?
Uh, Not really as yet. They lost their backup goalie, who's pretty good, and I can't think anybody they've signed. They've really drafted well. The kids in their system are some of the best juniors and college players out there. So I think that's what they're kind of waiting on. Like they got a defenseman that he's scored more than since Bobby Orr. He's the only guy to get 100 points 2 years in a row.
Wow.
And so they got guys coming up, but I can't think of any big moves they've made yet. They're going to probably trade Anderson, their defenseman. Maybe they get something for him. So
But
haven't
it's
done that much.
so important to have a really, really good scouting staff. Like I don't know what happens behind closed doors, but I feel like that's not talked about enough. To have individuals who can really recognize truth, bring in talent, but as important for that coach that gets them, let's say at the American League, to actually develop those players. Because you see so much of that, right? You see the first round draft picks, the second, third, fourth round draft picks that never materialize into anything. And I always wonder, like, why is that? Like, why is a sixth round draft pick like a Jamie Benn who's still playing, captain of the Stars? Like, how is he so able to be so good and develop, but the guys in the top four rounds, a lot of them just don't, right? So that's always that coaching. That's coaching, right? Fast
Yeah. You're
players have,
also you're drafting 17-year-old kids.
yeah.
It's very, they can still play midget. So it is a little bit of a crapshoot. But the Calgary last 2 years have two first rounders each draft. So you know, but they got this kid, this Bashaw kid, Medicine Hat, but he got this tear in his ankle and he missed most of the season, just played the playoffs. I thought he was going to make the team last year as an 18-year-old in the tryouts. And, so they got, they're pretty good. But yeah, drafting is so important because, you know, and you have to develop them. And they really, they just promoted their minor league coach to the big team, and somebody else has taken over the minor league team.
It just seems like compared to years back, there's a rush for that 19-year-old to play right away in the NHL, as opposed to giving them the opportunity to do a little bit. I don't know if some of that is just because you got to pay these guys some money. Is it because they won't sign if they think that they got to go to the American League for a couple of years? I always curious about that, because it seems like the teams in the past that were really good had really good developmental systems, and the players, it was rare that you were getting 18, 19-year-old jumping onto the big team.
Well, Detroit used to be the one that would develop the players. They came in and they play good. Edmonton would get these first round guys like Taylor Hall and all this and expect them to lead them to the Stanley Cup when they're 18 years old.
That's
They
what I mean.
burn out and then they get rid of them.
Yeah,
You know,
I think it's hard, right? You're doing a disservice of that player. Yet, do you have to do that because they won't sign unless you're telling them that's what they're going to be doing?
well, Calgary 2 years ago, there's a big exodus of the Swedes and some of the American players. They all wanted out. So what they ended up is getting draft picks for those guys. Guys like Hannafin and the goalie for New Jersey, what's his name, Markstrom,
Yeah,
and yeah, so they all wanted out of town. So they end up with a lot of draft picks, and I think they've done a pretty good job.
yeah, and I mean, to me, that's great, because I think that's where you get it. You can't just keep trying to fix things with a trade. Because I
I
worry.
wanted to watch last week. They had their rookie camp exactly the same time as our hockey. camp, so I didn't get to any of them. But it's I always enjoy watching that. It was just a pure development. They didn't even scrimmage, so just doing.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. It just it's different than it used to be, which doesn't make it worse or better. It's just different, right? I mean, that's kind
I'll
of
give
like
you an example from our university team. I We got a guy that led Canada major junior, 81 goals, 81 assists, and he wasn't huge and he wasn't a great skater. Well, nowadays they would have them working with a skating coach all summer because they did this with Zari, Calgary, and all, but they didn't. He never even went to a camp. He scored 81 goals, and the year before he got 135 points. The entire league, he was a top scorer in major junior in Canada, and he ended up playing university hockey. So now they would take him and really work on his skating now. Because I mean, I loved watching him in practice. I bet you he scored 85% of his shots.
wow.
He didn't just shoot to shoot, he shot to score, and he could fire the puck about an inch under the crossbar. But he never even went to NHL camp.
Huh.
So,
Oh, but what's the reason?
pardon?
Why?
They didn't. He's 5'9", and he wasn't a great skater.
Right.
But all his teammates who scored 20 goals are playing in the NHL. How much it must have driven him crazy?
No, I'm
Because he
just
was a
saying
1 second player.
it goes
He
back
saw the
to,
ice. He got 81 assists too.
I'm
He
not
saw the
arguing that
ice.
he should or shouldn't. I'm
Oh,
taking Peter's point here. How does your scouting staff come to a unified conclusion on a player like that?
Yeah. How do you not bring that kid to camp? Just bring him to camp. Like worst case
I
scenario,
know.
right? They
Well, I
show
would
that.
talk to this NHL pro scout that's always around, and I'd say, Archie, why wouldn't you have him shoot from the dot like Lanny used to? He's a right-handed shot, eh? It's unstoppable. And half the time he'd be laying on his stomach after he shot because no matter how bad the pass was, he'd get his body adjusted, but he'd still shoot rockets. And he was a 1 second player. Like he'd get the puck, he knew where everybody was, and he'd get the puck to them. So he was quick of mind. But yeah, he never even got to a camp. I don't even know if he got drafted. I should look it up.
That's crazy that you wouldn't like. What what do you lose by bringing that kid to camp? Like somebody's
Well,
embarrassed if he falls on his face, so to speak. They're embarrassed.
sometimes the scouts are arrogant though,
Yeah,
because he'd say this, and then the same guy said to me, Gaudreau's out there, right? And this was when he was just got drafted. And he's flying around the ice. He says, he'll never play. He's only got one move. I said, are you watching the same guy I am? That's, he just thought he was too small to play, eh?
yeah. Well, you always. I don't know if it's still the same, but it was always. I find 10 reasons why the small guy can't play, and I always say the big guy has potential.
Right. He has to prove he can't play, where the small guy has to prove he can.
Yep.
I don't
Guys,
know how
Yeah.
many draft picks Calgary in the years gone by wasted on 6'4" guys with hands of stone.
Yeah.
guys, my point is, how many of you have actually scouted? Like
Uh,
not coached, just traveled, because I did it for 6 years at every single level you could imagine. And holding national camps every year at the senior and U18 level, we had 12 scouts come in and we talked about what we saw. And we had 7 criteria. And the first one, to my mistake, we focused on skating, and I thought if you can't skate, you can't play. That's sort of the rule back in the day. And we had to, the first ice time was evaluating skating. And it's not just forward acceleration, it's strength on skate, it's speed with the puck, it's changing a direction. There's so many aspects to it. But the scouts had to talk about those things, and we had to agree on a scale of 1 to 5 to 2/10 before we moved on.
Hmm.
So by the time you go through those traits and you spend that much time with your 12 scouts, you collate all of the trait scores. The coaches aren't really involved in the trait evaluation, but we bring them into a meeting to tell them what we're doing. And the reason.
Wally, was one of those criteria, is the player effective?
What do you mean? Is the well, the criteria, and I can send it to you. Yeah, it is. If they're effective, they may have offensive hockey sense. We evaluated that. We have a defensive hockey sense as separate categories. We evaluated physicality, which was strength on skates, puck protection, so many other facets, which were valid at the female level at the time. And it all adds up to, yeah, can they play the game and do they have the qualities? And the coaches had to rate them in the tryout games rank them in the game rankings. The scouts ranked them on their trait rankings. And we used an Excel program and collated the ranking and combined what the coaches said for gameplay ranking with our scout ranking, and that's the team we picked.
Well, I scouted a lot when I was head coach of college, but it was me that did the evaluation, the choosing and everything. And even when I was in the Red Bulls, they sent me to Germany a couple of times
Yeah.
to watch different things, and they had their own little ranking system, but there were 12 people to discuss it with, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I did too. I scouted for a prep school team. I scouted USHL again to college, and did a lot of USA hockey stuff too, where that was very, very collaborative, like you're talking about, Wally. And when you go through the different criteria, and regardless of how I ever recruited, I never cared if you were 5'6" or 6'5". Were you effective? To me, that is the bottom line. Like, are you an effective player? If you're out there on a shift, do I find something positive that you're doing every shift? I probably want to find a way to get that player on my team, as opposed to the 6'5" player that maybe is big and really physical, but doesn't do much beyond that. Like, overall, are you effective? Are you effective in a way that can make the team better? To me, that's the bottom line. And if there's other things to fix, again, like in today's world, like you guys have been talking about, right? Skating coaches, etc., you can pretty much fix everything else. But I think the effective piece relates strongly to an individual's hockey IQ, because regardless of your size, if you find a way to be visible out there in a positive way, you probably understand the game pretty well.
You know, the one thing I learned from Mel Davidson scouting, she just told me, you don't want to be the last player to touch the puck on your team. And that is a very compelling observation, because they're the ones that don't move it to good ice, don't protect it, aren't able to hang on to it. You lose possession. And that's one quality that simplifies evaluation. And hockey sense, I think we've gone, Tom, through the era of skating first. Now it's really big on hockey sense. And I've always felt that of all the three, the skills are pretty equal today. The hockey sense is a separator, but it's pretty good, pretty equal. The difference at the NHL level is the intangibles, how they can play so hard, so competitively, so physically, game after game. It amazes me. So it takes a special breed to play at that highest level. And, and I really like it. Like, we're fans of the game. But we're not dedicated to the professional game. We're dedicated to the good of the game and what it does for kids. So, hell, that 4'7" player going to Harvard, she's going to be a hell of a student athlete.
Oh yeah, for sure.
How far she's going to go, I don't give a damn.
Right.
It's what she's going to do when she comes out of that experience, to me, that really matters. So we've got to be careful of our kids not getting to that next level, being better than this kid, and who's sport, who'd be drafting who's playing who's shortening your bench, because the reality of remind ourselves, why are we doing what we're doing at
Right.
our level? It's different than at the pro level.
For sure.
And the pro level tends to make better use of their personnel than a lot of minor hockey league teams.
Yeah, unfortunately, Wally, I think a lot of minor hockey coaches, especially younger, I don't even say younger, I'll say less experienced coaches, tend to use the NHL as a bit of a template, which is a mistake.
But I think it's unavoidable because it's so popular. We watch how players play, and we're looking at the draft, and they're going to bigger, stronger, maybe faster than smarter. I don't know. It's
Well, think
evolved.
about Florida. If you want to watch a team, they use all four lines.
Yes, that's my
They use
point.
all four lines, and Edmonton ends up doing the two lines, and they get exhausted,
Yeah,
and they get clobbered at the end.
yeah. No, it's an art. Definitely an art. So, uh, when you go full circle, I come back to Puerto Rico and your experience. Some of those kids are going to colleges right now. Sounds like all of them are pretty well, and they're getting good experiences out of it. And I can honestly say, and I think we can all speak to that. We were students first, athletes second.
Yeah, I think it's got to be a fun summer for these ladies.
Yeah. Are they?
Where do they practice?
Well, so practice is there's a tournament. Again, there's a tournament end of August. They come in early and they get a day of practice skating together.
Where are they doing this?
This is down in Florida. This is actually down in, I think it's the Panthers practice facility.
Okay.
Coral Springs. So they'll come in and they'll skate, and then it's 5 days, bunch of games, and back on the plane. See you soon. The other thing that they have developmental wise too, which is pretty interesting, IHF, they do 3-on-3 tournaments.
I've seen those. I've never seen one, but I've seen that they do that.
Yeah, so that's they're doing one. I think it's in Argentina in November. So they'll end up picking the best 9 players off of this team, I think, unless, again, there's always players filtering into this. So it's always kind of a organic and a work in progress in that regard. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes too. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's not really practice. I mean, there's Zoom calls before and talks about strategy and things like that, and things to to work on as a group, but not the ability to have a 2-week camp where let's go through all this stuff and now let's go down and play a tournament.
I like that idea because they're playing the game. They're making decisions. They're finding ice. They're saving ice. They're changing. So I think it's worthwhile right now, you guys. 3-on-3 is really important. And what would you teach 3-on-3 if you're using it as a tool? You go into a 3-on-3 tournament. What would you do? What are you telling them? What are some cardinals?
For me, I think the most important thing is to keep in mind that the puck moves faster than the skater and there's more open ice. So there should be more opportunities to get into open areas to receive pucks, and support, because there is so much space, becomes very critical once that puck is moved. Those are two things that I think would be difference makers in your ability to be successful 3-on-3.
Well,
Well, I think you have to play man-to-man defense when you don't have it. Everybody has to have one person. The new word is duplicate. So as soon as two players chase one player, that means someone's wide open. I know the Flames had a heck of a time winning overtime, and they would do that all the time. And some guy be walking in all by himself. It was usually a guy named McKinnon or someone like that.
hell, any ideas?
I'm working. I'll be right. So I wasn't zoned in.
The one thing that I would add is the most valuable thing is possession. And so possession changes. The idea of getting changes and fresh bodies out when they have tired bodies out. And I think that's hockey sense. You possess the puck, you're reading where you are, you can allow the change, you can make the change and catch them in a fatigued state. So Darryl Belfry advocates that 5-on-5. He doesn't want to dump in. He said, why would you dump it in? They're going to break it out. Usually you can dump in and create turnovers on the forecheck. A la Florida, they really capitalized on that. But the possession game 3-on-3 and the ability to possess the puck and move it to take advantage of space, it takes some teaching, it takes some learning. So, Tom, your 3-on-3 game, like the best players stood out because they could go coast to coast and nobody could skate with them. But when you get 3-on-3 at competitive levels, they're all pretty equal. And it breaks down because, like you say, two guys chase the puck.
We practice 3-on-3 quite regularly, and it's a rule that you suggested. We play 3-on-3, but they're not allowed to dump the puck in. So they have to keep possession. It's a good practice activity.
Yeah.
Fellas, it's about noontime here. I got to scoot. I appreciate the time, and as ever, you guys are great. I really look forward to these chats.
Thanks for coming on, Peter. Thanks for sharing your stories.
Absolutely,
you, Peter.
Take care.
See you, Peter.
Take care.
Bye.
Hal, what are you up to? Are you fishing, taking pictures, or
Actually, I'm still trying to get my shoulder organized, but I'm going to be shooting some photos, just event type of stuff, rodeo and some parades, and doing some, I'm sure similar to up there, all these towns have something going on in the summer, to bring money into the town.
Yeah.
Celebrations of some sort, that are part of their local history. So I got some of that going on. Fishing will be, I'm gonna go bass fishing on the Mississippi the end of the month. But between now and then, I've got a bunch of tests on medical tests to figure some stuff out.
Shoulders and that. Did you hear about what happened in Bemidji like a week ago? A huge wind, 10 miles wide, I guess,
Yep.
just devastated their forests and everything.
Yeah, one of my one of the kids I coached last year, his father grew up in Bemidji, and his dad played for Carver College, and he was one of our assistant coaches last year. So we went and played up there on our road trip last year. They were really good. But yeah, they lost a lot of trees, a lot of damage. It was really tough up there. Not as tough as Texas with the floods, but
Oh, that was brutal.
we've had so much rain. It's raining here right now. I got up this morning. I went, geez, my windows are open in my truck. I better get out there. But we've had a couple really nice, typical summer days, but we've had so much rain here. Mosquitoes are awful. You don't even want to go outside much. We have, and we live in the 7 county metro district, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they have a mosquito control uh, agency, and they fly helicopters around and drop pellets in wetlands and bodies of water that they can get at to try to kill the mosquito larvae before they hatch. Because from the time it rains till the time that they're up and biting, it's about 2 weeks. And every time it rains, it kind of starts the cycle over again.
Yeah.
And a couple of days ago, got up and went out on my deck, and I was like, "What is that noise?" And it was a quadcopter. It was a drone, pretty big one. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, like that. And it was zooming around over the wetlands right behind our house. And I watched it for a few minutes. I thought, okay, what's going on here? Because they do use drones. The real estate people do too, to show an area, to post online, to show the house and whatever. I don't know. And then when I left home a little bit later, I went out and on the street. There were the mosquito control guys were out there. They had 2 or 3 trucks, and they were flying the drone, and they're using the drones to drop the pellets in the water or whatever. And so they can stand on the street, with a joystick and a screen, and they can target, and they can get lower than the
Yeah.
helicopter can, so the stuff doesn't blow all over. Helicopter probably costs them $1,000 an hour, or $1,200 an hour. The drone probably costs them a couple $100 an hour, but mostly just paying for the guys. And so that was something new. And then I was at the office yesterday and looking out the window, and there was a drone flying around about a half a mile away over a residential area. They're going to be all over the place. I mean, it's the
Well, it's the
technology.
new warfare too,
Oh, for sure.
because
For
the
sure.
Ukrainians, they snuck a whole bunch of drones into Russia, went way back. Russians didn't think, they thought their jets were too far away, and they knocked
Blew
out
up a bunch
40%
of
of their
them.
Air Force with drones.
So, anyways, yeah, and we're just watching the daily Trump announcements that make the markets go up and down and make people crazy. And um, I keep seeing these posts from your prime minister, or I don't know, some of your political people about how mean the Americans are now, and you know, took all the American booze out of the liquor stores.
Well, yeah, that's not being pushed as much as it was when that first started, when, he was talking about annexing Canada and everything.
Pretty silly. Well, I say, let's see, is it Alberta? No. Do you have all the oil up there
Yeah,
in
Alberta's the
Alberta?
one we've got
That,
a
that,
whole segment would love to join the United States.
Yes, it's careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
I mean, this country, as you guys know, I mean, what we know, which is similar to what you know about life in sort of a northern latitude, but you get down in the southern part of this country. I mean, they're still fighting the Civil War down there. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so different, and culturally, it's so different. Educationally, it's different. Economically, it's so different. It's like a whole, it's like a whole different world in a lot of parts in the South. And then you go to the East Coast and West Coast are totally different than the middle. And I'm sure Canada's the same way. So,
Well, Alberta is kind of like the South. It just, people think, well, we got all this oil, we should just go on our own. We're giving too much to everybody else. And,
yeah,
they don't pay attention to that. There's all kinds of alternative energy sources coming on,
yeah.
And my mom used to say during the Dirty 30, she lived in Manitoba. She said the East is what kept the West alive because nothing would grow, and the
Oh,
Eastern
sure.
Canada was supporting the West, sending aid all the
Yep.
time and everything. People don't
Yeah.
have any knowledge of that anymore, but that's the thing of living in a country where you help each other.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to, yeah, there's no part of the country that has everything. You can't sustain on your
And
own.
we're totally landlocked. I mean,
Yeah.
and BC isn't very easy to work with as far as like it took years to get a pipeline through to the coast,
Oh, yeah.
so it's not like they're going to let us just go through and get to Tidewater.
Well, this is from a hockey perspective, this is an interesting time of year. Um, Lots of plans and lots of ideas. And, then you get your team and you go, well, yeah, I don't think we can do this. And I don't think they can do this. And like Peter was talking, I mean, we're trying to figure out how many kids we're actually going to have. We got enough for 3 teams, but
Yeah.
the second and third team are going to be really low, you know, pretty low
Well, even with our
skill.
thing, they went from 2 to 3 teams. So of
Yeah,
course, then now the bottom quarter of your team is probably not quite to the
yeah,
level of the play. So one of the big tasks is to get them to that level. You know,
yeah, and try not to get them, in situations on the ice. So I always felt that part of our job was to get the right players on the ice at the right time,
yeah.
and getting that third line out against the first line of an opponent, and then they get chewed up and they get discouraged, and it's hard to manage that, and even harder when the other team's only playing 2 lines and you're playing 3, or in your case, you're playing 4.
Well, one
So
benefit of our league is everybody makes the playoffs. The parents don't realize this,
yeah,
but you can every team makes the playoffs. So the key is to develop the best team by the end of the year. So our
right,
playoffs go like the top team, the 7 in our division. The top team gets a bye first round, then it's 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5. The first round of the playoffs or 2 rounds of the playoffs all went 3 games. The
hmm,
2 out of 3s. Like we lost our first game to
yeah,
the sixth place or fifth place team or something like that, then won the next 2. Every single did. So it's not that much difference between the teams. I think the big difference was the goaltending. The 2
yeah,
bottom teams, they had good teams, but they, very probably a little subpar goaltending.
hmm,
And then we won to go to the provincials. We won 2 games 2-1. So
you're pretty
it's
good
pretty
games.
darn close. So the key is to get everybody that they can play. So
Yeah, I mean, we're similar. Everybody makes our district playoffs, and it's a double elimination. So if you lose in that first or second game, you drop into we call it the back door, but you
Yeah.
still have a route to get to the
Minor
next
hockey week
level.
here is the same way.
Yeah,
You're allowed 2 losses.
yeah, and so um, yeah, and so I agree with you 100%. And I always have coached to get the team ready to play the best hockey. And I tell the kids, when does the season start? Oh, yeah, like next week. It starts in the second week of February. Everything we do between now and then is to get this team as good as possible so we can move on and we can earn more games by winning in the playoffs. And
Yeah.
a lot of these
Well,
kids who are coaching have never, never won very many games. And so um, now our Pee Wee team is supposed to be pretty good. So everybody's excited about them. The trend is, we got some talent down there, and hopefully those kids will stick around. But we'll see. A lot of
yeah.
player movement.
Well, yeah, challenge to make the parents understand that you're not going to shorten your bench and have, you know. So what we did last year is everybody got 1 month on the power play. We have 2 power plays.
Okay.
Everybody got 1 month on the power play. Everybody killed penalties. And then
Yep.
after Christmas, we start, you
Yep.
know, the ones that did the best on the power play and all this kind of stuff. And everybody is either a penalty killer or a power play person by the end of the year.
Okay.
And it worked pretty good. With 20, having 18 skaters, you can do that. It works out just right.
Yeah, we'll have 15 skaters, I think. Our problem last year was we had so many injuries. We had a couple of kids hurt, and then we had a lot of these kids get sick a lot.
Yeah.
And we'd have kids that don't show. Some nights we'd only have 12 skaters. And
We
so
have
ice time's not a
affiliates.
problem.
Yeah. Like we'll pick our team and we'll pick 25. And those five
Yeah.
are affiliates. And then from the Pee Wee, whatever, there's some affiliates too. So if someone's sick or injured, we bring up somebody.
We can't we can't move we can't move players once we form the team. And a
We
lot of
can't move
that
them
is,
either, but that, if they're, we can't sit a player for an affiliate to play. We made a bad mistake on 1D. One should have been on the team and
mm,
and we couldn't flip them after we picked our team. But she ended up playing quite a bit for us, because of people hurt and all this sort of thing.
yeah, well, we have to have rosters have to be frozen at the end of December, but in reality, you pick your teams and you put the rosters in late October, and you can change them, but nobody wants to. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to do the paperwork to do it. And
Well, I
so,
think Hockey Canada is December 10th, but our association, once we pick off this tryout thing,
yeah,
and then we had the five, so we have the five extra. We have to name our roster. I think it's by mid-September or something, because they say the
okay,
communities need these players too to try out. So they want it
sure,
all done so that they can get on those teams.
yeah,
And so, yeah. So, anyways, yeah. Once it's fixed, we can't move
yeah,
players.
that's all right. I mean, it seems to work. I always have thought tryouts, the kids end up, for the most part, will end up on the right team. There's maybe a bubble player, one or, the bottom player on your team might be as good or not as good as the top player on the next team down. I mean, um, it's kind of a crapshoot. They only get like 5 sessions, 4 sessions
Yeah.
before we start separating them. I think they get one, two, yeah, they get four. That's it, and 4 hours ice. And so with
Ours
your
get
camp,
6 games, so that's a little better.
yeah, I wanted to get some scrimmages, but nobody's in favor of that. So,
I don't know how you can pick a team without scrimmaging. Like to watch them practice. I mean,
well,
it's not really hockey.
the sessions will be at the start will be a lot of I mean, they'll scrimmage against each other, but when you
Yeah,
got C level players and A level players on the ice, it doesn't show me a lot
no.
because the top two or three kids are just going to dominate the whole thing.
Well, that's why
Uh,
we do it the way we do. We start with 8 teams, and
yeah,
then it's 6 teams,
yeah,
then it's 4 teams, and out
yeah,
of those 4 teams, we pick 3 teams, and they each play. So true that at the very start, there's real you know the separation diminishes as you go along.
yeah. I can see that. That's one of the advantages of having that many kids. So we just don't. I think we're going to have 51 or 52, which includes goalies. And at Bantams, we only have we might have four, but then we got this other problem. It's the high school is a little light on players
Yeah,
because they run a varsity and a JV, and they graduated 12 players, and they only have three goalies, or two goalies, and so they want our goalie,
yeah,
and that means we'll have one goalie, and they want our best player. And he's not ready, in my opinion, he's not ready to play high school hockey, but
yeah.
that my opinion doesn't matter in this deal. I've seen the prior high school coach he grabbed the best player on the Bantam team, and kid got hurt in the second game, and he was out almost the whole season.
Well, one benefit our grade 9 here, ninth grade isn't part of high school. It's junior high, which is,
Oh,
mentally they should be in high school. There's a big
yes,
difference between a ninth and an eighth grader. But we don't have
yes.
high school hockey anyway, but we have the sports school that's taking one of our players is going to the sports school.
Oh yeah, hockey academy or something, or
Yeah,
sports
the edge.
academy.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
going there. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they have a U15 team or just U18. It's going to go there and maybe play for that Super League.
Oh yeah.
So
Are you
they have skill practices.
are you 50?